All right, my name's Ty, and I am against the legalization of recreational marijuana.
My name is Sam Suter, and I'm going to be explaining to you why I think recreational marijuana should be legalized on the federal level in the United States of America.
All right, so I did some research and found many different reasons why marijuana should not be legalized recreationally. And a few of them here are a graph that Statista Research Department share of customers in the United States who currently smoke marijuana as of July 2019 by age group. Statista.com, October 23rd, provides statistics showing the number of people who smoke marijuana and what age they are. And you can see that the most popular age to smoke marijuana is in the earlier years of people's lives. Legalizing marijuana increases use for teens and could have harmful effects. Upon researching this, I came across an article by the American Academy of Pediatrics, The Impact of Marijuana Policies on Youth, Clinical Research, and Legal Update Pediatrics at publication.org, March 2015, stated that the adverse effects of teen marijuana use include impaired short-term memory and decreased concentration, attention span, and problem-solving skills. The effects are going to have potential problems in the classroom for young teens. And looking at the last paragraph that I talked about, impaired judgment, we can see that this has something to do with the brain. And what happens when you smoke weed or do any form of THC, the THC particle fills up the CB receptors in your brain. Marijuana produces cannabinoids that look similar to endocannabinoids, which are what usually fill up the CB receptors. So basically, the THC receptors disguise themselves as those endocannabinoids and fill up the CB receptors in your brain, giving you the high. So with that being said, a high has everything to do with your brain, and marijuana use harms the brain and will increase mental health problems in society. When looking further into the National Institute of Drug Abuse, is there a link between marijuana use and psychiatric disorders? Drugabuse.gov, December 2017, revealed cannabis use may increase the risk of developing schizophrenia, depression, and other psychiatric disorders. You can't ignore the fact with the use of marijuana comes the increased potential of a serious psychiatric disorder. With the legalization of marijuana becoming more popular, many organizations study the effects of the drug and what it can do to people. Legalizing marijuana is opposed by many of these major public health organizations, some of them being the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and the American Academy of Pediatrics. If these associations are opposed to the legalization of recreational marijuana, then why should we even be talking about legalizing it? And then additionally, commercializing marijuana will create a big marijuana industry that exploits people for profit and targets children. I discovered two different pieces of evidence to back up this statement from Kurt Isaacson. Legalizing recreational marijuana is hard for public health, statnews.com, November 2nd, 2016. He stated big marijuana is already using tactics similar to the big tobacco company, which marketed cigarettes using ads that appeared to kids. Cigarettes were very popular when they first came out, and many people did it, and the big tobacco industry used cartoon characters and many different other tactics that appeared to kids so that younger kids would buy for themselves. And a statement written by Walter McCullough heads up that candy treat may be a marijuana edible. These marijuana industries are coming up with many different ways to ingest the product. And he says marijuana is available in a kid-friendly form, such as gummy bears and lollipops, and products sometimes resemble familiar brands such as Butterfinger or Keef Cat, and wrappers that look like Butterfingers or a Kit Kat wrapper. We can't have the weed industry be marketing towards kids because these are our future generations, and we can't have them having these psychiatric disorders or different mental health problems because of the legalization of marijuana.
It is a common concern to many people in the United States of America that legalization of recreational marijuana would increase teen use. According to the Marijuana Policy Protect, study after study has confirmed that marijuana policy reforms do not increase rates of teen use, they rather decrease. Some argue that marijuana legalization creates a steep cost for society and taxpayers. However, a study done in Nevada shows that in just 7 years they will generate over $7.5 billion. Obviously, there is a couple harmful effects of marijuana, mainly coming from marijuana that's bought off the streets. But legalization of recreational marijuana would help phase out black markets, and by 2020, 90% of marijuana market will be licensed and sold by legal vendors. Did you know that there is nearly 90,000 deaths annually caused from alcohol, and the deaths from marijuana is next to nothing? The marijuana industry could exceed $24 billion by 2025. For every $1 spent on the marijuana industry, between $2.13 and $2.40 in economic activity is generated. Traffic deaths and arrests for DUIs, do not increase, but rather will decrease from legalizing THC. According to that same article, in states that legalized, traffic deaths dropped by 11%. Arrests have decreased in both Colorado and Washington. Many people have heard of someone being hurt by marijuana or laced marijuana and dying, or some very fatal effects. But this is commonly sold off the streets. This is when someone puts a harmful substance or chemical in the flower of marijuana. Legalization would decrease the risk of this happening. Legal marijuana is regulated for consumer safety. According to Jay Barman, people buying off the streets have no way of knowing what they are ingesting, whether it is covered with mold, fungus, pesticides, or any other harmful substances. Once legalized, governments can enforce lab testing and regulation to ensure it's free of toxins. Colorado, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska all passed regulations to prevent kids to exposure of marijuana. Legalization allows age restrictions and restrictions on buyers and license to regulate growing and distributors. It is 2021, and it is time for a society to study science and facts rather than an outdated and non-factual mindset. And there's no reason the government should regulate if someone can smoke a joint or not.
All right, so we talked about how the traffic deaths have decreased since legalization.
Yes, sir.
So I did some research, and traffic deaths actually rose to 62% after marijuana was legalized in Colorado. And yeah, they might have fallen off now, but I mean, that could be just because people are getting used to it and getting used to the driving aspect under the influence. But right away, when states are going to start legalizing this, people are going to think, oh, it's marijuana, it's legal. They're not going to know what it's going to do to their body for some that maybe haven't smoked marijuana at all. And they're going to get behind the wheel and start driving, causing more deaths if they can't control their high or whatever.
I think that goes back to using things in moderation. And you look at nicotine products, alcohol, cigarettes, anything that is quote unquote addictive, you need to use in moderation. Alcohol is a lot more addictive, according to multiple studies that I researched, than marijuana is. And I think that goes back to knowing what you're getting into. Don't go to the bar and drink 6 shots, then drive home. Don't go smoke a joint, then drive home. It's just kind of common sense, in my opinion.
Yeah, but then you look at what is that moderation, because this drug will affect different people differently, right? So people aren't going to know their amounts, and they're going to they are going to get in their car and smoke a joint and then go drive. And I mean, depending on the person, obviously, because it affects people differently. So that one person who smoked their joint and went and drove, they could get in that accident, killing a family, say.
I read that on should marijuana be legalized or not, that while using marijuana in some users, it'll actually increase their ability to drive better.
Okay, so yeah, going off of that, they take fewer risks than drunk drivers, is what you said in the article. But that's comparing them to drunk drivers. What about a person under the influence of marijuana compared to a sober driver? And drunk driving has killed thousands and thousands of people,
Right.
affecting many different families. And the marijuana affects your motor skills, kind of like alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to affect your ability to brake fast enough, or like you could be driving at 3 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon when all the kids are coming home from school, and a kid's going to run out in front of you. If you're under the influence of marijuana, are you going to be able to brake fast enough to stop?
And no doubt in my mind do I think you should drive sober, but I would rather see somebody smoke under the influence of marijuana, drive under the influence of marijuana than alcohol, just because of what I've researched and studies show.
That's a good point. But
yeah.
And then another thing you said was about how it's going to stop people from buying off the streets, and how the government has these regulations as to where buyers have to be of legal age to buy. But let's be honest, how many college kids are under the age of 21 that drink?
Quite a few.
So all these young kids are going to be able to just go ask their buyer to go get them that marijuana or whatever. Or these dealers, I mean, this doesn't take away the fact that there's just regular street dealers, because those young kids still have to buy.
Yeah.
So you could get these 22-year-olds going into the dispensaries, buying all this marijuana, going back to their house, lacing it, and then going out. I mean, they could. You never know.
They could. I just think that's very unrealistic. According to Stephen Downing, a retired LAPD deputy chief, there's no question that ending today's prohibition on drugs and legalizing marijuana would do more to hurt the cartels than any law enforcement skill dedication can ever. That's my input on the black market and the whole buying off the street.
And I found the Colorado Attorney General's office stated that the legalization of marijuana has inadvertently helped fuel the business of Mexican drug cartels, and how cartels are now trading drugs like heroin for marijuana, because marijuana is so widely accepted now that more and more people are going to start using it. And these drug cartels are going to keep benefiting from the fact that if they get rid of their marijuana, they're making money.
Legalizing is phasing out black markets and taking away money from cartels. Data from the United States Border Patrol shows that marijuana seizures have decreased by millions of pounds, and they're at the lowest levels they have been in over a decade.
And I also found local officials are also saying that Mexican cartels were growing under the cover of legal operations in Colorado. So basically, with what they're saying there is that these drug cartels are using the legalization in these states to grow their own marijuana or have their own industry in those states.
And I'm sure there always will be.
To make money for
But
them.
It's at the lowest level it ever has been in a decade.
But with the legalization of more and more states, how many people or how many drug cartels are there going to be that are coming into these different states and making their own industry?
I think that based off more states legalizing, that'll be more cartels that are going out of business because everything has to be regulated and studied at a lab to legally sell to vendors. So
That makes sense. Well, we had our debate, and I guess we have two different opposing sides
we can
here,
agree
but
to disagree.
there you go. Thank you.